Sup, dude? You're gonna need one of these. Cause it's time for Dudes After Dark. Let's go! What's up, everybody? Part 2 of the Dad Pod Dudes After Dark. And it's me again here, Tony Lane, alongside my rest of my crew here and our second guest of tonight. Really fun author, really enjoying my first book of him, and his brain is just going to be fun for everybody to dive into because this guy's way smarter than all of us combined. Yeah, I don't know how we got someone so smart to do this. It makes me, kind of question that a little bit, but hey, we're going to go with it and have a good time. Author Vince Guerrieri. And real excited to meet. Just met him last week. Author of Weird Moments in Cleveland Sports. We just had Ken French on, head coach of Oakland City University men's basketball team. That was an absolute awesome show. We had Damon, we had Johnsy. We played Block or Charge, Johnsy's favorite game. And speaking of Damon and Johnsy, let's get Johnsy in here first. Out of Turlock, California, Brandon Johnsy. What's up, dude? And out of Florence, South Kakalaki, our Southern Fried, Smoke-a-Fried Samurai, Mr. 814, the minor of Carolina Gold.
Hey.
What's up, dude? Our producer that makes it all happen as well.
Hey, long time no see, guys. Long time no see.
Hey, speaking of which.
What's up? This is DPK, and you're watching the Dude Network. Stay dirty.
His words, not ours. His words, not ours. His words,
my man.
I'm excited for this. Lately. Yeah, and I love that too. He was real appreciative of it. But his stuff's really nice to use on the reels, by the way.
Yes.
So real excited for this one here. We're kind of doing a lot of sports tonight, which you guys know is my original love, and I'm dragging you guys into the sports world. I'm starting to get the vibe that you guys are looking into it a little bit more on your end. You're kind of getting into sports again,
That's right. Yep.
Damon, we're trying to make him a Browns fan since he doesn't really have an NFL team, so we're going to make him. We're going to make him.
They do have a guy who played in the Carolinas, not the Carolina, but he played in Clemson.
We had Clowney a couple of years. I mean, that's
they did have Clowney. Yeah. The best player to come out of it. Yeah.
My only question is, how much more of a lonely island will it be being a Chargers fan over there than it is up here?
You won't get any. Yeah, more, definitely more. I just think people and Vince here will be able to testify with us, and we'll get him on because I think he's going to be a better speaker. His brain seems to be a lot bigger than mine. So but my take is going to be no one's going to care because as long as you're not a Steelers fan, Ravens fan, or a Bengals fan, like they don't care. They all if your team has never won a championship, we sympathize with you, and you're like in our fraternity. So you would actually get a lot of love, I think.
I'd have to remove the Bengals tattoo on my shoulder.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, probably.
Hey, it's a tiger paw.
Hey, week 1. Hey, Johnsy, week 1, they're playing the Bengals. Just saying.
It was a joke. Look,
it's a joke. It's not really there. He said it's not.
I promise.
It's that kitty cat tattoo you got.
Hey, take your shirt off, or it didn't happen, man. That's all I'm doing.
There's no Bengals.
Oh, there it is. He's got right next to his Illuminati throat tat right there, man.
Oh my Lord.
Oh man, we're 5 minutes in. We're 5 minutes in. We've hit on the Illuminati. It's going to be a banger. It's going to be a banger.
I hate when you guys bring that kind of crap up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Michelangelo. Did you know?
By the way,
did you know that the lead singer of the Cranberries donated all their money to
Oh my gosh. So, yes, everybody, to correct that real quick, I was wrong about in the way, but everything else I was correct about. And it was an accident, just an accidental drowning.
It was
because you partied too hard.
Yeah, it partied. Yeah, it was accidental, and the kids did get some money.
Partied too hard.
So Tony's fit full of tears was worth it.
It was worth every bit of it. Speaking of being worth every bit of it, it's worth every bit of doing back-to-back shows when you have guests like the one we have coming up here right now. A guy that I've only known for a short period of time, but I love his energy. I hope me and him can continue to talk for a long time after this, because he makes me feel smarter after every conversation, the few that we've had. And I'm hoping we all feel smarter at the end of this one here tonight. A man that is a Bowling Green University grad, enthralled in the highs and the lows of Cleveland sports history and misery. He knows the goods, he knows the bads, he knows the beauties, he knows the atrociousness and the uglies and the ones that were beaten with the ugly stick that are worse than that. A man that has written a book called Weird Moments in Cleveland Sports that you just have to read for yourself, even if you're just a remotely sports fan. Some of the stories and ironies that I've read so far are absolutely awesome. A man that puts Cleveland on the map with awesome information, author and now friend and fellow dude, Vince Guerrieri.
Thank you.
We'll be here all
Honored.
night. He'll be
I'm
here
grateful.
all night.
I'd like to thank everybody who made this night necessary.
Yeah, it's a possible thing. Yeah. I cornered him up at Burke Lakefront last week. I was like, "So you're going to come on the show, right?" Like,
Yeah, that's you were asking.
Me,
I don't know how we got this guy. I followed your siren song of
There
what was the cut?
Picanha.
Yeah. And
He
it
had
was,
some fricks
it
in
was a
Picanha.
religious experience, and you know, he said, hey, I got a podcast, and I go, hey, I give good podcast, and you accept me, so you're my friend now.
I love it. Hey, glad we met for sure, and I'm glad you got some of that Friction Farm Picanha. Shout out.
Oh, seriously. Oof.
I was so nervous. Hey, Vince, if we're talking about it, if you ever want to talk about nervous about nailing the temp on a steak, that was the one. There was a lot of eyes. There was like 5-6 people huddled around me when I cut into that, and I was like, please be pink in the middle. Please be pink.
Well, I brought I brought some adult beverages for us to enjoy. So, you know, I kind of operated under the assumption that everybody was a little more relaxed, and maybe their palate wasn't quite as refined as would be a cause for concern for you.
There you go.
Yeah, that's how I know he was
everything.
That's a true friend right there.
Hey, that's a dude right there. That's why we have him on. Hey, any guy that comes to a party with a 12-pack, gotta have him on. I mean, he understood the assignment, and even though we didn't ask for it, he just did. Yeah.
Right.
So, Vince, we were talking a little bit here a couple minutes before the show started. Absolutely love the book. I'm like on page 80 of like 390 on my Apple book here of Weird Moments in Cleveland Sports. You know, that's obviously you've done a lot before that. You don't just like, hey, I just did a book. Like, you've had to do a lot to get someone to get behind you to do the book. You have to have bodies to work. Tell everybody about, you know, from the days of graduating from Bowling Green up to this book, what's the background events here? What writings, publications? Have you done any other books? A little background of yourself.
Well, I was a journalism major at Bowling Green, and most of my experience has been in newspapers. Writing, editing, you know, unfortunately, the newspaper market is such that you can't really afford to specialize anymore. You know, in the last 10 years or so, I've branched out into some more magazine type writing. This is actually my third book. I wrote 2 and co-wrote another. They were all sports history related, all Ohio sports history related, actually. But, you know, my day job is at the Chronicle Telegram in Elyria. It's a city outside of Cleveland. And I will write for anyone who will hire me. Did a lot of stuff for Cleveland Magazine and Ohio Magazine. You know, got some national clips, Defector and Popular Mechanics and Politico. But like I said, I mean, as long as the check clears, I'm game.
Love it.
Luckily you did this before mine made it. Yeah. I'm still looking for them envelopes. People still looking for those envelopes. So explain. Okay, so why Ohio sports history? It seems like that's like your niche. Why? I mean, is it you're just born and raised in the area and like you just love the area, or did you just more like once someone dives into like a rabbit hole, you just kept peeling back more and more layers, and you're like, man, there's so much here to dive into.
Well, I grew up in Ohio. I grew up in Youngstown, right on the Ohio-Pennsylvania state line, and we were talking a little bit off air about where, people's fandom lies. And Bernie Kosar was kind of the guy that tipped the scales for me. I could have just as easily been a Pittsburgh fan as I could have a Cleveland fan growing up in Youngstown. Funny thing, my father, I think, might be the only Bengals fan in Trumbull County. He was one of those guys that was so mad when they fired Paul Brown that he followed Paul Brown to Cincinnati.
I was going to say that's it.
I kind of fell into Cleveland fandom, and yeah, it's been an experience. And we met at the Big Play Studios, and Chris McNeil is a friend of mine, and he has a very avid social media following. And one day we were all talking about all of the weird things that have happened in the history of Cleveland sports. And there is a long litany. This is the longest book I've ever written. And, we put together this list, and this would have been early 2020. And then in March, the pandemic hit and everything closed down. Fortunately, I didn't have a lot of really dire concerns. We kept our health and we kept working, but I had a lot of spare time. And I said, I bet I can turn this into a book. And I don't, if you're writing a novel, if you're writing fiction, they expect a completed manuscript. If you're writing a nonfiction book, you can usually sell it on the strength of, again, your own body of work, and an outline and a couple of sample chapters. And I was able to do that with Gray Publishing here in Cleveland, and turned in a manuscript, and they liked it, and they published it, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Hell yeah!
Wow.
There you go.
So we got Johnsy and Damon over here. They're not Clevelanders. They don't really know the struggle per se.
Whatever.
You think you do, but you have until you live it. It just doesn't feel the same. Johnsy, go first here for first question for Vince.
I gotta know in your studies, and you don't have to give away any spoiler alerts, but what's one of the weirdest things you came across in doing research for that book?
Well, I mean, it's a generational thing. I mean, every generation of Cleveland fans has their own touchstones. I mean, it's I grew up in the 80s, and everybody wants to talk about all the many stupid things that the Indians did in the 1980s. I mean, I don't know if you guys have watched Major League, but there's a reason that they made that movie in 1989 about the Cleveland Indians. I mean, the team was absolutely nowhere. But the one thing that everybody of a certain generation wants to talk about is, when we're talking about the Indians, is 10-cent beer night. And the anniversary of that actually is just a couple of weeks ago. And what's really interesting is 10-cent beer night, or some variation of it, nickel beer, 15-cent beer, whatever. It was actually a fairly common promotion across the major leagues in the 70s. And Cleveland just had one that went historically wrong. I mean, they ended up having to forfeit the game because there was a riot on the field.
Jeez, man. Wow.
I mean, and I grew up around Raiders fans, like that's what's so wild. Like, you hear about crazy stuff happening in Raiders, like the Black Hole. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but I've never heard of a riot on the field.
And there were, and there were people who had stories like that about, the dog pound in Cleveland Stadium for Browns games, in old Cleveland Stadium for Browns games. My favorite story, somebody wrote about this in Sports Illustrated. He said somebody brought in, like, they called it the dog pound, and somebody brought in Snoopy's doghouse, and they would sit it next to him, and everybody says, oh, wow, this is nice. You're really getting into the dog pound thing. And one of the ushers said, I I started to get suspicious when it took 6 people to bring this doghouse in and 3 to carry it out. And apparently, what they were doing was they were smuggling a keg into the stadium in this doghouse, and everybody was partaking. And actually, one of my friends once told me, if you want to bring beer into the stadium, and I think this was before they started doing the metal detectors and all the real serious security, he said, if you want to bring beer into the stadium, put them in the kids' jackets. They will never search the kids for beer.
You know what's funny
Only in
is?
Cleveland.
I once did that at a drag strip at Norwalk, the big one there in Norwalk.
Oh yeah, I Summit Park, yeah.
Yeah, I was going in back in my bachelor life, and just a true story, they started going through my stuff, and I saw like the person in front of me actually was getting searched, and I'm like, no. So there was a kid behind me, like my buddy's son. I said, give me your backpack. I threw 6 in there. And they went through, and I was like, listen, I ain't going to lie to you. I have a couple beers on me. I didn't know we weren't. So I sacrificed a couple. Gave them a little bit.
Right?
Good play.
There you
And
go.
then I was like, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Kid just walked right in. Little Hayden.
I
Nice.
went to an Indians game with my daughter, and she'd have been about 2 years old. And at that point, the kids are portable at that age. I mean, you can bring them. You don't have to buy a ticket, nothing like that. But I brought the diaper bag in, and the guy's going through the diaper bag, and he stops, and he looks at me, and he says, I don't know why the hell I'm doing this. If you're going to bring a 2-year-old to a ball game, you should be entitled to bring in a couple beers.
That guy deserves his freaking job right there.
That's right.
Right?
Well, maybe his boss might disagree, but yeah, we agree.
He needs a promotion.
His boss
He
didn't even
needs to be
know that.
supervisor.
We need We need him on the Dude Network. That's what we need right there. Oh man. By the way, I do have we do have a copy of the book. While we do want to share this before we get into it too much and get into it, everybody wants to know what the book looks like. It's only $9.99, so it's a really affordable read on Apple Books. It's right here.
Yep.
Beautiful, and that's our beautiful Guardian.
I can't take a lick of credit for that cover. David Gray, the publisher, he took that picture and he said, we're gonna do this, and he made it a point to tell me, because I wanted to call it Weirdest Moments in Cleveland Sports. He says, let's call it Weird Moments, because things can always get weirder.
Yeah, there's always a second book now.
Yeah. Oh, he'll probably agree. Isn't there like a whole like series available?
I mean, it's probably something I wouldn't revisit for a little while, but man, there are a couple of things where, I say, yeah, I should have included that, or, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. If this had happened 6 months earlier, I'd have put it in a book.
The great thing is he wrote a book, and 6 months later, weird shit still happened.
Yeah. Part 2.
I mean, we're living it now. I mean, God, the whole Watson thing last year would have been like a story of like weird.
Well, I mean, I tried to keep it as light as I could, and I feel like the whole everything around Deshaun Watson would have kind of besmirched that, because there are a lot of weird things that have happened in Cleveland sports that have not been funny. I mean, the Indians have the only player that has ever died from injuries on a playing field. I mean, there are lots of tragic things that have happened, and I tried. I did not want to include that in this book, because I wanted it to be a very light, very fun read.
Yeah, and it was. And I like how your stories are like really close together. Like, sometimes you get stuck on a chapter and you're like, God, I just want to get through this chapter. Like, I'm over it. Like, I like that, like, so far, like the longest thing is like 3 pages. Then it's a whole new story. It's like a whole new thing. And on the beer night, I want everyone to know I learned something from Vince reading that, and I blacked out there for a second on the connection, so you might have touched base. The fact that they did like 2 more 10-cent beer nights after the riot caught me off guard. I thought that was like the end of it. They're like, no.
Supposed to be the first of 4. And they did at least 1 more after this. And it was about a month later. And that drew an even bigger crowd than the one where there was a riot.
Welcome to Cleveland. Double
But
down,
they
baby.
learned their lesson. They tripled security,
Yeah.
and they said only the first 2 beers are going to be 10 cents, and then they're full price. And at the time, full price was like 65 cents. And they said, and the guy, there's a guy by the name of Bob Sudik, and he was a writer for the Cleveland Press, and he wrote the next day that, it was so, it was like a church social. I mean, there was like no problem, because the 10-cent beer night, I mean, it was an adventure from the word go. I mean, people were jumping down and mooning people. I mean, there was a woman who ran over and tried to kiss one of the umpires and she was well into her cups. And I mean, people were running across the field. There were stories about streakers. I mean, it was just out of control
gosh,
fairly early on.
Dream party of mayhem.
That was
And
full
then
on
the
mayhem.
next one, like nothing happened. And what's really funny is it was the first of a 4-game series with the Athletics. The Athletics had won the World Series the previous 2 years. They were going to win the World Series that year too. It was 1974. And it was Catfish Hunter for the Athletics and Gaylord Perry for the Indians. And the Athletics ended up winning, but the next night was the night that Dick Bosman threw a no-hitter for the Indians against the Athletics.
Oh, wow.
And
I
poor
remember-
guy,
I
no
remember
one
that.
remembers that. Thanks a lot, 10-cent beer night.
Right?
Yeah.
We were out to dinner tonight at one of the local breweries in Cleveland. I don't know if you spent a lot of time. I know you spent a lot of time up here, Tony, but
Yeah.
there's a very vibrant craft brewing scene in the Cleveland area. And we were out to one of them tonight, and sure enough, they were selling 10-cent beer night t-shirts. June 6th, 1974.
Bitching.
That was awesome.
We have one of our friends of the show, Dirty Jersey Barbecue, owns the 10-cent out of New Jersey, owns and has worn on the show the 10-cent beer night shirt.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Right.
it's just because he had some college roommates from Cleveland, but we're known for the 10-cent beer night. We're known for the bottle gate, which you touch on. There's so many stories. But Damon, I know we got some stuff, but I know you got a question before we get into some of the clips down here.
Yeah. What was in your book? Like, what would be? Is there any controversial stuff that might be in the book that you talked about?
Plenty of controversial. Well, I should say plenty of stuff that was controversial at the time.
Yeah.
He had mentioned Bottlegate, and that was one of those things that, it was another one of those instances where everything goes wrong all at once. And because I don't know if you guys watch, there's a show on the History Channel called Modern Marvels. And one of the regular series that they do is engineering disasters. And if you watch those, you learn that for things to go really, really wrong, a lot of little things have to go wrong along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And, Bottlegate was a real good example of that. It was the Browns and the Jaguars, December of 2001. And it was Butch Davis's first year as a coach. And the Browns had won a grand total of 5 games in the previous 2 seasons. And they were still in the hunt at this point for a playoff spot. And the game's in Cleveland. There's like a minute and a half left to play. And the Browns are out of timeouts and they're driving. And Tim Couch throws a pass to Quincy Carter on 4th down. Looks like he got the first down. They go up to the line of scrimmage. Tim Couch spikes the ball, stops the clock. The referees say we're stopping the game. And everybody says, "Oh, geez, did Tim Couch intentionally ground it?" And what they said was the previous play was an incomplete pass, and the Browns turned the ball over on downs and effectively had lost the game at that point. The rule then, as now, is if you're going to challenge or review a play, you have to do it before the ball is snapped for the next play. And the ball had been snapped for the next play. And what they said was, "Oh, well, we were having problems, getting word down from the booth, but we wanted to do this before the ball was snapped." And of course, you've got 60,000 fans, and none of them are interested in hearing any of this. And they were not thrilled at this development. And they shared their opinion the only way they knew how, by throwing stuff on a field.
Yeah, Yeah, and everyone forgets that the Saints game the next week because they threw some bottles on the
No,
field.
it wasn't the next week. It was the next day. The Saints
That's
were
right.
playing on Monday night.
It was Monday night, yeah, because they're like, and it was like immediately, and then it was like, but it was still all the Browns' fault. But then like the Saints, then are like, all right, no more bottles. Like we're done with the bottles at the games.
And what's really funny is they actually stopped play. You know, the referees said it's not safe for anybody to go out there. We're declaring the game over. And I guess the league office called in New York and said, you can't do that. You have to finish out this game until the clock strikes zero. And you know, the Jaguars came back out, the Browns came back out, and they knelt down a couple of times and they called the game over. But it came up later on. It came up years later with, and it was the Saints again. It was that phantom pass interference call that was never called, and one of the fans sued, and the filing said because the commissioner ruled that this game had to be played until its natural end, he has the authority to replay the game from this point when they obviously biffed on the on the ruling. And of course, I mean, the lawsuit ended up getting thrown out, but I mean, there were people out there who used Bottlegate as like legal precedent.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The only thing I remember of that is I remember watching it with my dad live because I was like in high school when all this went down. So like I was, pretty young at the time. But I remember like it just starting to happen, and my dad doesn't say sons of bitches. He says Sunza, like Sunza, sons of bitches. And I remember my dad just being like, good, they deserve it, those sons of bitches. But I remember like the clip from the announcer was, a man beside me just got hit with a battery and he's bleeding everywhere. This is getting out of control. Like word for word, like I'll never forget that line from the announcer. He's like, people are throwing their transistor radios. That's the thing. Like they call it Bottlegate, but it became Everything Gate. Like if you had it, it was getting launched. I remember they were doing like photo, like they were going through the video highlights of who was throwing, and they would see where them seats were, and if they were as a season ticket holder, like they were getting prosecuted, right?
Yeah.
And it's really funny because Cleveland is also home to, well, it was home to the company's been bought and sold and formed into other people, but it was home to Flash Seats, which was a company that Dan Gilbert, who owned the Cavs, invested in, and that's one of the first real ticketless admission companies. I mean, those were the ones where they said you keep the ticket on your phone. And what they told me, I've written about them for Cleveland Magazine, and they said, one of the reasons we do this is for market research, because, up until about 10, 15 years ago, at any given sporting event, you knew who, like maybe 20% of the people were actually in the seats. And Bottlegate's a real good example of that. I mean, they didn't know who they knew who bought that. They might have known who bought the tickets, but they didn't necessarily know who was sitting there. And, they had to go and look at the video to find out, who were the people they were going to ban or, revoke their privileges or whatever. And we live in a world, and we saw this a couple of years ago. Well, at least they tried to do this a couple of years ago. I think it was the Titans game where they tried to ban somebody who was throwing stuff onto the field from the end zone. But now they can figure out who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably because of Bottlegate. They're like, we need to tighten this up.
Well, I'm sure that was one of the reasons.
Yeah, I'm sure that was a long time coming in sports stadium fans arena,
Oh man, I don't know which one of you guys is next. I feel like Johnsy, you got to go yet, right?
Yeah, Johnsy.
Sorry, I lose track, Vince. I'm bad.
That's all right.
Are you more of a baseball guy or a football guy?
Ooh.
Yeah. I guess lately I've been more of a baseball guy because Man, the Browns don't make anything easy. I mean,
Yeah, I'm a Chargers fan, but I get it.
no, yeah, I'm sure you do, and that's they don't. The Chargers are even more heartless. We joke. In 2016, the Browns were 0-14. They hosted the Chargers on Christmas Eve and beat the Chargers. And it was, it kept the Browns from going winless that season. But it was one of those things where, I mean, we joke about it. We joke that, the Chargers felt so bad about it, they left San Diego. But I mean, obviously, whenever we see a team move like that, or like the Raiders going to Las Vegas, or what appears to be happening with the Athletics, I mean, we really feel for them because, I mean, as Browns fans, we did everything right. There's this idea that if a team moves, it moves because there is no more demand for it in the city that it was. And that was not the case with the Browns in 95. I mean, they had very good local television ratings. People were buying the T-shirts. People were, getting into being a Browns fan. People have always gotten into being a Browns fan, even in the last 20 years when they don't deserve it. And, there's this idea that this compact was broken.
Yeah, and we had this guy named Bill Belichick building up something with Nick Saban as his defensive coordinator. And Kirk
Saban had actually left the year before. He had left after, in 94, the Browns went 11-5 and made the playoffs. And after that, Saban left and was the head coach at Michigan State. But yeah, I mean, they were, they were kind of, we thought they were on their way to something. And they were. It just turns out it was Baltimore.
Thanks, Fidel.
Yeah.
Thanks, Fidel. You sons of bitch. Hey, we got some clips here for you to go over with Vince, because we do like to, we like to have some fun on here. So we got some. I don't know what Damon's got. I know we got one here, and it's of recent memory, very, very recent, and I don't think it'll make the weird moments. But we want to know if this was fact or fiction with this certain event of the recent Cleveland Guardians game. What? Okay. Yeah. So some of us think, we all think, maybe a ploy, but the sheer look of
Right here.
Right there.
Right there.
Yeah, right there. Yeah. Yeah.
But that movement, I don't know, man.
We kicked out the heel a little bit excessively on that there. I think maybe he biffed it a little bit harder than he was expecting, because the next day he did have a ripped up thigh muscle. So, what, Vince here, man? I know baseball's a sacrilege. Did Sir Yacht do the unwritten rule breakage by doing? If it was fake, did he disrespect baseball with the first pitch?
I know Sir Yacht. I shouldn't say I'm tight with him, but I mean, we've crossed paths enough. And man, I watched him on the worst chefs in America, and the dude didn't know how to work a can opener. So it's entirely possible that this was something that actually happened. I mean, I can't dismiss the idea that he actually biffed on the pitcher's mound. And I've actually known a couple of people who've thrown pitches, and they said that throwing off a mound, if you are not used to it, disorients you.
Very different.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past him to engage in a little showmanship, but at the same time, I can't say for certain that he didn't actually, fall off the mound.
The other thing is, everyone forgets he did just break a leg. Like, he was in a cast in the walking boot for
it was a couple months ago, though.
Yeah,
that was a little while
man. I mean, geez,
we're still in rehab. We're still in rehab.
15-year-old calcium fullified bone making machine anymore, John.
Yeah, we're like 15 years older than that guy.
You might be, huh? Easy. All right. Speaking of Cleveland first pitches, there was another doozy this year. and we're going to ask which one was worse here from Vince. So here's the next one. Ooh.
Whoa.
Now that was real. That was real.
Yeah, that's I mean, you don't look to tight ends to throw the ball, any kind of ball.
Now, if he was that catcher, he would have caught that thing with his bare hands, guaranteed.
But like I said, I mean, it can be disorienting when you're throwing off a mound.
If I ever get the opportunity, 2 words: Hideo Nomo. Book it.
All right. I was at the first opener at Jacobs Field, and Bill Clinton came out and threw a first pitch. And I know enough people who were at the game, who were in the press box, who were in the, who were in a position to know that Bill was downstairs in one of the throwing cages throwing to make sure that he didn't embarrass himself.
Good night.
You heard it here first. Insider info. Bill Clinton's Fugazi.
That's
Yeah,
right.
he just embarrassed himself in other ways.
Yeah.
Oh, too soon?
Oh, John D. There goes.
Oh, God.
We've lost 50%.
I mean, it's all relative.
Hey, stuff happened, bro. I'm not taking sides on nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. He did not have any sexual relations with that woman.
That's false.
We actually
He
did.
told us
I
so
was in
afterwards.
college when all that came down, and we actually did a radio show where
Oh,
I
here we
just
go.
read particularly lurid excerpts from the Star Report, and it was that's some quality programming right there.
Okay. There's one thing I never understood in this is
Just one.
when he had his impeachment, the one thing he didn't get in trouble for impeached was for lying to the public, which was an impeachable offense.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, wait a minute, but he literally went on camera and said he didn't have any relations with anybody. I was like, how did he get off of that one? But anyway, that was like 12, 13-year-old me, trying to make sense of the crazy world. It was a lesson I learned. Yeah. So, all right, man, that was good stuff. Yeah, it wouldn't be a Cleveland game without some bad pitching, right?
Mhm.
First pitch or no pitch. Damon, what else you got here for us?
Oh yeah, I mean, he's Vince is on it. I mean, so maybe you just get disoriented while you're on the mound. I mean, this guy did too.
Uh-oh. Oh.
Whoa.
Walk it off. Didn't happen.
Savannah Bananas? Or...
Nice to
Oh,
feel
the
Walker
Brewers.
Brewers.
Oh, oops.
So, I
What
mean,
the heck?
he just
Block or charge?
That looked
he
more
just-
fugazi
Mhm.
than 3 odds.
yeah.
Yeah, except he didn't rip his leg up on the dismount.
Yeah.
Well, learn how to fall right. That's all I'm saying.
Oh man.
He should have played outside a little bit more.
No,
Mhm.
should have played. So Vince, in all your stories that you put in this book of Cleveland sports, and I know we keep talking about the book. I mean, you've done so much more than that. But was there any story
No,
that
that's
you came
fine. I'm here to try and move some metal.
Yeah, right, man. Let's move some.
Love
For
the
$9.99
attitude, brother.
Yes,
Love
sir.
the hustle.
Hey,
Love the
$10
hustle.
or less. $10 or less guy right here in this book is it? Because guys, I wouldn't bring anything that was over $10 to the table. Don't worry about the taxes. That might, it just depends on where you live. But anyway, so is there any stories that you didn't know anything about, or was there any story that you thought you knew, but when you dug into it was way different than what you thought, or maybe was it a both?
There were a couple that there was at least one that I was alive for and I had no recollection for it. And it was the story of Tyrone Hill renting a limo because he was so traumatized from a plane trip with the Cavs that he said, "I'm not going in another plane." And there was an incident, and they were in the season, and I think it was '95, and they had a problem landing, and it was kind of scary for a few minutes there. And they ended up landing, and they played the Knicks in the first round of the playoffs. And Tyrone Hill said, "I'm not getting in a plane again." Rented a limo to go from Cleveland to New York City. And I'm sure it's a lot nicer ride in a limo, but that's a little bit of a haul. I mean, that is a good solid 7-hour ride. And I mean, he ended up getting his ass kicked in that series. I know, right? The Cavs get worked over by the Knicks in a playoff series. When's that happened before?
Yeah, I feel like that's somewhat distant memory.
Only that once, I'm sure.
No, it's not. This
No,
year I think they said it was the fourth or fifth time that the Cavs played the Knicks in a playoff series, and they have never beaten the Knicks in a playoff series.
Really?
But anyway, they got worked over, and Tyrone Hill was just kind of particularly got worked over, and I said in the book maybe he had limo lag.
Man, yeah, I mean, hey, man, like them limos don't have sprawled out couches or anything. And Tyrone Hill was the center, right? He was like 4 or 5. He was like 6'10", 6'9".
I mean, something like that. But I mean, 6'9", yeah. But I mean, it was one of those things where, of course, it was the '90s. So I mean, the cars were probably a little bigger at that point. He probably had a nice town car or something.
I don't know, man. It better been a nice one. I would not be renting no hoopty to go from Cleveland to New York City. That is a fact.
Way. Full bar service too, probably. That was the problem.
Yeah. That was probably it. He was probably so wasted. He was probably hungover for 6 days after that trip.
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah, hey, I want to know what the minibar looked like after he left that limo. That's what I want to know. Was there any bottle of Tito? Well, it wouldn't have been Tito's.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been Tito's, man.
Would have been Mad Dog 2020. That's probably what it was.
Yeah, I was gonna say, my palate was not refined in the '90s, so I didn't know what high-end booze was like.
Yeah. What was like 90s Zimas and stuff? I remember Zimas were big in the 90s. The Red Dogs were big in the 90s.
Red Dog ice beer, Natty Ice and Bud Ice, and there were all these ice beers that were supposed to be like 1% or 2% higher in the alcohol content too.
Yeah.
Personally, I thought it was a great day. I thought it was a great day when I went to somebody's wedding reception and they had Seagram 7.
Hell yeah. 7. They're like, do you have 7 Up? I've heard of this drink called a 7 and 7.
7, yeah.
I've heard of this mystical unicorn of a cocktail. They call it 7 and 7. Oh man. So what would be happiest, wildest moment where things went right for Cleveland? We always hear, and that's what I love most about your book. And I want to talk about it because as a Cleveland guy, Johnsy and Damon are still learning the struggle of Cleveland fans through my relentless and endless stories and tales. When you see weird moments in Cleveland sports, you automatically think of all the bad things that have happened
that's gone wrong
in Cleveland. So, after when I got to the story of the Joba Chamberlain Midge story, I was like, oh my God, that was something that actually happened in Cleveland. And that's when I got excited about the book because I thought I was just going to get kicked in the nuts over and over and over and relive all my traumas over and over and over and relive. Yeah, but
you just read more into it. You ain't got to the good stuff yet.
Yeah. But there was some good stuff, but there was some positive mixed in there too. So which one of the stories is your favorite good weird moment in Cleveland sports history? Was it the Midge where we knocked off the mighty Yankees from Joba Chamberlain?
The Midge one was a pretty good one, but my all-time favorite from now until the end of time, I can watch this on a loop, is the ball bouncing off Jose Canseco's head and going over the fence at Cleveland Stadium for a home run.
Oh,
yeah. The Indians are playing the Rangers, and it's last year at Cleveland Stadium. And Carlos Martinez, of all people, hits a fly ball to right field, and Canseco is shading back and shading back and shading back. And he's on a warning track, and a ball hits him on the head and goes over the fence. And what's really funny is if you are watching the contemporary coverage or reading the next day's paper, initially nobody realized what had happened. I mean, Canseco was looking around for the ball. The other outfielders were looking around for the ball. I mean, Martinez is jetting around the bases, and this was, I think it was his second year as manager, but Mike Hargrove, I guess, was the only person who realized what had happened, who said the ball had gone over the fence and that was a home run.
Isn't that, I mean, could you imagine? Like, that's a bad day at the office. And Jose Canseco, of all people, is who it happened to. I mean,
Right.
Canseco, to his credit, had a great sense of humor over it.
He did.
He said they're going to play this on Sports Center for a week. And he went like 0 for 3 that day. He said the only hit I got went off my head over the fence.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was at the very least, he was a sport about it. And David Letterman ended up doing a top 10 list about it the next day or the day after, because I did not watch. I was out of town. I did not watch that game. I think I was on like a field trip or something. And I stayed up and watched David Letterman the next day, and it was top 10 list topic.
That's awesome.
That was actually my second favorite David Letterman Cleveland related top 10 list. My favorite is the one when Peyton Hillis was the cover boy on Madden, and they brought him to New York and they did the photo shoot and they had him on Letterman, and he said, they read the top 10 perks of being the Madden cover boy. And my personal favorite is he says, I got a new catchphrase. What you talk about, Hillis?
Hey, glad he made it. Hey, good job, Peyton. Way to pull through last year, man. Saving all them kids from the river.
Yeah. There was just a story on a wire about that, and I guess it was pretty scary.
Yeah,
I mean, when you're going into the water like that, I mean, stuff can roll up on you in an instant.
Wow. Yeah, it can be real wild. Speaking of wild, we have some wild clips to go over here with you, Vince, and it's just called Sports Bloopers. Remember, we're just going to go over some blooper reels here with you, man. Lighten things up and have a couple laughs here with you over. What are you drinking there? A stout?
Porter.
I'm drinking a what's his nuts from Saucy Brew Works here in Cleveland.
Don't know Saucy. Where are they out of?
Chocolate peanut butter brew. I really like it. Their main place is Detroit and West 30th, I think. But they got a couple other locations through the Cleveland area. I think they got one in Detroit, possibly one in Columbus as well. But I'm a fan.
Okay. All right.
Is it a porter or an ale?
I think it's a stout.
I was going to say, looks stout.
Yeah, John Z. Not a porter.
Well, sorry, a couple
What's
times
his nuts is a vanilla stout brewed with Madagascar vanilla, peanut butter, and Honduran coffee.
Oof.
That's from their website.
Honduran. That's the good stuff right there, Honduran.
Yeah.
Not as good as Blue Mountain out of Jamaica, but, pretty good. Pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Not almost as good as Bourbon Pecan from Kakalaki.
Oh,
I don't believe I have partaken in that one.
I will.
Oh,
next time I see you, Vince, I'm going to bring some Kakalaki Bourbon Pecan coffee beans with me, man.
That
It's
hits all the notes I'm looking for.
Yeah, it'll change your life, man.
My wife once in a while will make one of those Kentucky Derby pies, the pecan pie with the chocolate chips and a bourbon.
Oh,
Hey,
Vince, I hear you, man. I think I know what we're talking about here. Damon
made a bunch of cookies. We're actually going to her cousin's wedding tomorrow. The cookie table is a Youngstown, Pittsburgh, Canton type thing. Cleveland, it's kind of hit or miss. There aren't a lot of people who've heard of it, but apparently it is a very old tradition that goes back to when all of these immigrants would get married and they didn't have enough money for a cake or a real reception or anything like that. So everybody would make a tray of cookies for the wedding reception.
Oh, neat.
So we're gonna have a bunch of cookies tomorrow.
Okay.
I think we did that for ours in some capacity. Like people could donate cookies.
Mm-hmm.
We did somewhere. I remember this now. I didn't know it was a big deal, but okay. Look at you. Look at you. Look at Vince's brain.
They
working its thing.
assignments were passed out. They took this very seriously. My wife and her mother made cream wafers, and Lady Locks and Aunt Debbie made the peach cookies, and Aunt Cindy made the baklava. I mean, there was some serious divisional
Jeez,
labor.
man. Heck yeah.
Damn, baklava.
Oh, I was thinking like snickerdoodle chocolate chip.
Yeah,
like
you know,
macadamia.
oatmeal raisin.
I mean, there may be snickerdoodles and macadamia nut cookies too. I'll take some pictures tomorrow and send them to you.
All right, let's go, man. Let's go. Hey, Damon, I know you got some funnies here. Everyone, we are probably going to go a couple minutes over an hour, so Vince, hopefully that's okay here. We got a little behind, but we
I'm
definitely.
fine. I'm
The
enjoying it.
Yeah, my kids are asleep. My wife's out doing her adult time with her friends tonight, so I got all night. So I don't know
Nope,
about you.
I'm the only one awake in the house right now, I think.
Nice, you think? Well, we'll find out in a minute if a shoe comes flying in at the.
Hey, I'm in the basement. Nobody bothers me here.
Hey, I heard that, brother. I heard that.
This is my underground lair.
There we go. So Dave, you got a nice little thing here for us.
Now
Damon,
he's got
take
like
it
that
away.
Lex Luthor thing going
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
I did. I got this. I bought this chair at an estate sale. My father says, "Man, you're like a Bond villain in that thing."
That's awesome.
Thanks, Dad. I like that. Hey, Bond villains work until they meet Bond, but you know.
Yeah.
I just found a freaking tick on me. Nice.
Oh, dude, come on now.
That's no good.
Never mind. I'll stay here.
Yep.
Oh, don't come out here if you hate ticks, because it's about the 5th one I found this year. All right, Damon, take it away.
Yeah, so we got sports bloopers. So I mean, we staying in Cleveland. So I mean, this guy was the Browns at the Browns stadium, but it must have been 10-cent beer night there as well.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Nope.
Oh,
Wait. He ain't done yet. Don't stick a fork in him.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's maybe a standing 8 count, but he's still upright, man.
That's right. It's this guy back here behind him there.
This is what it's like being a Cleveland Browns fan.
For one year, I covered the Browns, and I would roll in. You would get. They open up the press box about 3 hours early, and I would get on the train at like 9 o'clock, and I would see some pale, hearty souls with a 12-pack under each arm, getting ready to go tailgate at the Muni lot.
Can we talk about the guy in the back? Okay, go back a little bit. The guy in the bib overalls does the most bib and overalls thing ever. He pulls out his cannon, starts snapping it.
Right?
Starts snapping. We're packing it here. Yeah, this guy's in here from it. It's not my problem. I got Copenhagen to do.
Yeah.
It's
flawless
flawless
entry of the Copenhagen. Oh, he's
double. He
knew it was going to be a long day. He needed to. We did.
Night.
Hey, that's
welcome to the Muni lot, boys.
He goes down for 20 minutes and he's back at it.
Yeah, he's going to the Cavs game after.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's right.
That was awesome. That was a good one, Damon.
That's one of the things about being a Browns fan. You realize how many people can stay upright long after they have the capacity not to do so.
That's awesome.
That was great.
And this happened just recently here.
The 3-2 swung on a pop foul back here.
Ow! No!
Wow! Ow! It really hit me. I didn't know it was coming back that far. Now the 3-2 swung on a pop foul back here.
Ow! Ow!
He said ow before it hit him in the face.
Walker charge! Oh my god!
Oh!
I thought it just nicked him. No, it popped.
No,
it popped the mess out of him.
That was a four-seamer
my
to the face
God.
piece, man. Oh.
That's John Sterling. That dude's like north of 80. I mean, that's
Yeah.
one of those things where you gotta
And look at
really be
I
careful.
didn't know it was coming
You
back
hate,
that
you hate,
far.
you hate that it was the Yankees announcer. You hate that it was anytime the Yankees.
Oh yeah, I really hate that.
How
Yeah.
long has he been? How long has he been announcing them? He's north of 80, like 50 years.
I don't think it's been quite that long,
Yeah.
but it's been a long time. 1989, he started calling Yankees games. So I
Okay,
mean, back when they were still terrible, and George
Yeah, so
Steinbrenner was a lunatic.
What is that? 30-some years now.
34.
Ohio guy. Shout out
34,
George.
something.
Everyone forgets George is from Columbus.
Cleveland. He went to
Cleveland.
Ohio State, but he's from Bay Village, and he actually comes into. He gets mentioned in the book because he owned a basketball team in Cleveland in the '60s that was just went down in flames to the point where the Cleveland press said George Steinbrenner has poisoned the well for pro basketball in Cleveland, and he almost bought the Indians before he bought the Yankees, but that deal kind of fell through. And Steinbrenner kicked the tires on the Detroit Tigers and ended up buying the Yankees from CBS in '73. And again, the rest, as they say, is history.
Nice.
I actually might have some George Steinbrenner nuggets for you, Vince, that you might not even know.
Hit me.
Ooh.
Okay. You know where his first coaching gig was? Like he coached at a down at Wright Pat Air Force Base. Like he coached.
No, it wasn't Wright Pat. It was the one in Columbus, and I can't think of the name of it. Rickenbacker.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Rickenbacker. Okay. Yeah, because down in Columbus. I knew it was a team. Yeah, I got the okay, so not a good start on that. I know Damon and John's here watching. Do you know what famous
Strike one.
at the time NAIA basketball star he coached against that once held the all-time scoring record in college sports?
Ugh.
He ended up writing the foreword in his book.
No, I don't.
Rio Grande's own Bevo Francis.
Oh, Bevo. Yeah, okay. And you can tell you're a real Ohioan because you said Rio Grande.
Oh yeah.
Your buddies don't know this, but there are cities in Ohio that are not pronounced the way you think they're going to be pronounced.
Yeah, it's Rio Grande, we know, but yeah, I
Lima
got you.
and Vienna and what else is there now? There's a whole
there's so
bunch of
many.
places, yeah, that are named after. Oh, Milan.
Worcester, not Worcester. It's Worcester.
Milan, Ohio.
Milan.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, and Worcester instead of Worcester.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's in a lot of states like West Virginia. West Virginia has a town called Hurricane, but it's Hurricane.
It's Hurricane, yes.
Yeah.
And I learned. I spent a little time in Virginia, and they said, and it looks. There's the last name that looks like Taliaferro, and they pronounce it Tolliver in Virginia and West Virginia. And I'm going, okay, I don't get it.
Yeah, it's not McDowell County in West Virginia. It's MacDowell. You gotta say MacDowell. Yeah. What's funny is, speaking of that, guys, Ken French, we just had on, was a 15-year coach at Rio Grande University before going to Oakland City. So we had some ties, and actually, he was the reason.
Oh boy.
He was the head coach when I got my Bevo Francis signed Rio Grande jersey when he was still alive. That's my prized possession. Yeah, that's my favorite.
As a fat guy, all I know about Rio Grande is that's where Bob Evans is from.
Yeah.
Well, over here
rest
for
in peace,
me,
Bob. Rest in peace, Bobs.
Mm-hmm.
over here it's pronounced Rio Grande, and it's a river that runs through the Grand Canyon and a type of turkey that we hunt.
Okay.
Yeah, the Rio turkey.
Yeah.
And down in Texas, it's the river of territorial warfare too. So,
but Steinbrenner was. I mean, he went to. He coached at the base in Columbus. He was actually an assistant coach at Northwestern for a while, and he was an assistant coach at Purdue. He was an assistant coach at Purdue when Len Dawson was there. And Len Dawson, I also mentioned in the book. There's a whole chapter in the book called "Wait, That Guy Was Here," and it's about all these people that you might not think of who played for one of the teams in Cleveland. And Len Dawson very briefly was a quarterback for the Browns. But
was it the Browns or Rams? Was it?
No, it was the Browns. It was
Okay.
he was drafted. The 57 NFL draft was absolutely stacked. The first pick overall was
I love
oh my
this.
God, I can see his face. I can't think of him. Paul Hornig from Notre Dame. And the and John Brody was picked by San Francisco, and the Browns lost a coin toss to the Steelers. The Steelers got the 5th overall pick. The Browns got the 6th overall pick. And the Steelers drafted Len Dawson, and he washed out there after a couple of years. And the consolation prize for the Browns was this running back out of Syracuse named Jim Brown.
Oh, I never heard of him.
Right?
Yeah, who's that?
I think he was just in the news recently.
Was he good?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Did he even do anything?
A little bit. But
Yeah.
the Len Dawson played for a couple of years in Pittsburgh, backed up Earl Morrall, backed up Bobby Lane. Steelers cut him. Browns snagged him because he's a Northeast Ohio guy. Played a couple of years in Cleveland, backed up Milt Plum. And he says, I want my release. There's this coach that I worked with at Purdue, and he's getting a job with a team, and he wants me to come there. And the coach was Hank Stram, and the team was the Dallas Texans, later the Kansas City Chiefs. And Len Dawson obviously went on to a Hall of Fame career.
That's awesome. Now, what was he from Cleveland or outside of Cleveland?
Alliance, to be precise. So
wow.
I'd say about
Mount
halfway
Union.
between Cleveland and Youngstown. Yeah.
The home of the great olive debacle. There's a wild one. You know that one, Vince?
Fill me in.
You never heard about the big in Alliance? There was like this higher up party, and they served these spoiled olives, and they were like rancid. And it was back in like the 30s, 40s, like this.
Oh my God! I looked this up. No, it was 1919, and this sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, and it was. There was all these higher up people that died from this party, and they served bad olives, and they got so rancid they killed everybody that ate them, including one of the butlers, because the butlers were supposed to taste it first, and they still served it. And then the butler, no, it's documented. You can go to the mansion that was the family. Like it's
okay, listen.
How the Alliance stupid. Historical Society has like a page on this. This is. I had
how
no
dumb
idea
are you
that
to eat rancid food. You can't mask rancid.
In 1990, but the butler might have just hated him. He's like, "F it, we're all going down."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you would go to pick that up and be like, "I'm not eating this."
You got to think though, canned food and olives was it was a high end party. Like not everybody had olives. That butler, that might have been the first experience they ever had with olives.
Have you seen my Surströmming video? There is a natural body reaction to get away from rancidness.
They didn't have ketchup yet in 1919, Johnsy. So what was in a can was a mystery meat, essentially. I mean, it was a wild card.
Your nose will tell you no.
Well, the nose said no from the grave, and it killed all. But anyway, like all these, I'll have to send you the article, man. But it's a real thing.
That is crazy.
It is
full of Len Dawson's and the killer of
olives.
Oh, that's one of the craziest things I've heard, dude.
And I worked with a guy from Alliance, and his mom was the curator for the mansion, and that's how I got so privy on that story. So it's just, I mean, this,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, there's a museum in Alliance for the family, but yeah, it was. Alliance, yeah, he's got it right here. Oh,
yeah.
I like look at Vince using the private. He's already smarter than us on. Yeah. Right, olive poisoning. I like how it says part 1.
I got it right here. No, look, yeah, let's look at this.
Like
I got this right here.
Of this story, apparently.
All right, you got it already? Because I'm about ready to pull it up.
Okay, I got it. Just put it in.
All right, there we go.
August 23rd. Oh, that's 100th anniversary. Where is it?
Where she will meet with her husband and accompany her.
Oh, sorry. We'll leave Friday.
All right. We all got some reading to do tonight, huh?
Yeah.
There it is, folks.
I'm telling you, this is a real welcome to Ohio. This happened.
That
August
is wild.
23rd, my sister's birthday.
That's my father's
Absolutely
birthday
wild.
too.
Oh, look at that, Vince. No wonder you're so cool. We knew it. We knew it all along.
I assure you, I'm not that cool.
Oh, Vince, you're cooler than the other side of the pillow, brother. We love it. Dave, I know you got a couple more clips down here. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll get
Yeah.
through the clips and then we'll just chat
Yeah,
it
we
out.
got we got one last one, and I mean, I think it'll hit home for Vince. So
Oh,
we'll ride this one on out.
is this the one?
There it is.
There it is. I got it, Coach. I got it. Oh, it never gets old. It never gets old.
Right there.
Oh.
All day, loopity loop.
Oh,
No.
it's outstanding.
So at this ballpark, Vince, I got to go to one game as a kid, and it was rained out, so I never got to go to a municipal stadium other than to sit and wait for the game to be called due to rain.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. We didn't. Son of a dairy farm. We didn't get out to Cleveland much from Tuscarawas County back in.
I think I went to about a half a dozen baseball games there, and I went to one football game there. I went to one Browns game there, and it was after they announced the move, and it was like a wake. I mean, the one thing that I still remember is all the advertising was gone. I mean, there were no ads on the scoreboard. There were no ads on the boards as you come out of the concourses. But if you went there for a baseball game, and like I said, this was in like the 80s and the early 90s when the Indians were nothing to write home about. It was you and about 3,000 of your closest friends in a stadium that was built for 85,000 people. I mean, the place was just absolutely enormous, and the paint was peeling, and they had the troughs in the men's room, and it was a dump, but damn it, it was our dump.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, I just remember like the last game, just looking up, and they would show to the fans, and people were holding their season seats like over their head, like an Indian war cry, like yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like they literally, Damon, fans literally took their season seat home with them that they owned for all years because they knew the stadium was getting torn down.
People came in with
The last game
screwdrivers
was
and
just-
drills
it
and
was-
things like
it was a
that. Yeah.
free-for-all. It was a free for all, and I still know people that have some of those seats in their dude cave.
I have a seat, but we bought it.
These people didn't do that.
Yeah, we came across ours legitimately.
Yeah. Oh, they did too. Just ask them.
Right.
That's what Art Bedell gets. That's son of a bitch.
Well, what's really funny is that was the stadium was right on the lakefront, and they essentially bulldozed it and pushed it into the lake. And this is actually one of those things that's more common than you might think. Every few years or so, the New York Times would always run a story about how they took these old subway cars and they would just dump them in the water so they could make some kind of natural reef.
Right.
So they dumped a lot of the remnants of the stadium into Lake Erie. And this would have been mid-90s. The Browns' last game at Cleveland Stadium was 95. The Indians were gone by then, and they tore it down a little after that. In 2012, when Hurricane Sandy blew in through New York and New Jersey, and it was still it wasn't a hurricane anymore by the time it got to Ohio, but it was still a pretty good storm cell.
Yeah.
Blew in and actually pulled up, the waves were such that it pulled up some of the bricks from the stadium, and they would like land on people's beachfront property in like Bracknell.
That'd be cool to get like some old municipal like stadium bricks right there. And you go out like seashell hunting and you get some municipal bricks one day. Like, hey, even better. I have a question for you. I have a question for you, Vince. I mean, as Cleveland fan to Cleveland fan, out of all the painful memories, what's been the most painful?
I mean, we talked about this a little earlier. The Browns moved. I mean, they moved, and the fans had not done anything wrong. I mean, they were still supporting the team, and the team moved anyway because Art Modell thought he could make more money in Baltimore. And what happened after that is, the Browns died so every other new stadium in the NFL could get built. Because I was having this conversation. They said, yeah, the Colts left Baltimore. They got a new stadium. The Browns went to Baltimore. Everybody got a new stadium because that was right in that era. I mean, how many stadiums date to that era in the late 90s and the early aughts? Because everybody got scared out of their wits. If the Browns could leave Cleveland, it can happen here too. And I mean, what really bothers me
That's
about this,
That's a really interesting take.
and that's what happened. I mean, think of how many stadiums there are now in the NFL that are only 20 or 25 years old. And it's because, the Browns moved and kind of motivated everybody else to get that deal done. And it was, and everybody made out on the deal except the Browns. I mean, you've seen what the team's been like for the last coming up on 25 years. I mean, it has been almost its ineptitude has been an accomplishment unto itself because you feel like in 25 years, the NFL is not built for a team to be this bad, this long, over this many quarterbacks, over this many coaches, over two ownership groups. I mean, just on sheer percentages, and the Browns seem to do this. They seem to put together one winning season every decade or so. And I'm afraid 2020 was it for a while. So, I mean, it's just, right.
Oh.
And it's just one of those things where, it looks like everybody made out except Browns fans.
Yeah, it was. I remember the decision was pretty big because it was like for the first time ever, like we had the guy,
right?
Cleveland had the guy. We had the Michael Jordan, the Mickey Mantle, the whatever greatest of the great, and we knew it too. And the fact that it was done,
and the way the NBA was structured, Cleveland could offer him more money than any other team.
Yeah, and he said, "I don't want the money. I want to go join with someone else." And he did it. He made us all wait. He did it on national spotlight for a Boys and Girls Club in Connecticut. So out of all the random ass states, Connecticut.
I mean, he couldn't do it if his decision was to go to Miami. He sure as hell couldn't do it in Cleveland. And that was the thing.
But you would think though, as like to soften the blow, he would have done like something for Akron, for the Boys and Girls Club of Akron,
And that was the thing too, because I mean, I really thought he was going to leave. I thought it was more likely he was going to leave than he was going to stay. But once he said we're going to have this special on ESPN, I thought he's got to stay because he's not going to have a live primetime special. He's a smart guy. He's not going to have a live primetime special just to stick his thumb in Cleveland's eye. And well, I was wrong about it.
Surprise.
Yeah.
About
that May, I was in New York and I went to an Indians-Yankees game. I was telling Damon I like to go see different ballparks, and that was the year that we went to New York, saw the Mets' new ballpark, saw the Yankees' new ballpark. I'm wearing my Indian shirt, and I'm with a couple of buddies, and we're riding the train up to Yankee Stadium. And there were these guys that were just looking at us, and they were looking at us, and they were looking at us. And I'm thinking, I'm going to get in a fight on the subway going to Yankee Stadium. And finally, one of them says, "Hey, are you guys from Ohio?" And we said, "Yeah, we are." And I'm just ready for whatever comes next. And he says, "What the fuck is LeBron going to do?" And I said, "Man, I got no idea."
Now, I would think the worst, but I still, as bad as that was, I'm with you, though, there was never an emptier 3 years of my life than the Browns not having a team. And I remember I was cheering for Mark Brunell and Tom Coughlin and the Jacksonville Jaguars and their expansion team with my pops because
sure.
I mean, we just like Mark Brunell. I don't know. Like, I mean, we really liked that. Like, it was a new team. It didn't have, like, they needed fans, so we went with them. And I remember it was like And it was almost painful as a Browns fan. You saw the Panthers and the Jaguars in their second year ever in the league, both making the championship games that year.
Well,
So-
no, that wasn't painful for me because when the Browns came back, I said, this gives me hope because if these teams 2 years after being an expansion team can play in their conference championship, I mean, things can be good for the Browns. And well, I was wrong.
We all were wrong, brother. We were all wrong.
Now, see, at this point,
Oh.
I was in college at Bowling Green, and we're just as close to Detroit. I think a little closer to Detroit than we were in Cleveland. So,
Right.
we were getting all the Lions games, and I watched and I watched some of those, and it was kind of a lateral move from being a Browns fan. But I went to one game at the old Silverdome. And my buddy says, we should go see him play the Cardinals. I said, the Cardinals? What the hell do we go see the Cardinals for? He says, because Jake Plummer's on my fantasy team. I go, all right, whatever. You got different fantasies than I got. And we went to the game, and the Cardinals won. And I said, we should, and I had said before this, we should go see Barry Sanders at least once. And we saw Barry Sanders. And the Lions scored one touchdown. And it was not Barry Sanders who scored it. It was their fullback, a former Browns first-round pick, touchdown Tommy Vardell.
Touchdown Tommy out of Stanford. Oh, my goodness.
So I have a special moment in Browns sports history for myself, actually.
Oh, here we go.
All right.
This was years ago when I used to play fantasy football, and I was really late getting in on a draft. And I was talking to my dad, like, oh yeah, I'm playing fantasy, blah blah blah. He goes, oh, who's your quarterback? And who was it that his name Johnny?
Johnny
Manziel?
Football.
Yeah, Johnny Football. Yeah. Menzel, right?
Yeah, we talk
Oh,
about him. We
God.
talk about him in the book, don't we, Vince?
Hey, so listen.
Yes, we do.
This is my
He
favorite
could have
moment.
gotten his own chapter.
Cleveland history. I tell him who it is, and he goes, oh, who does he play for? And I go, the Browns. And my dad dropped his mouth and his eyes got big and said, Cleveland still has a football team?
And it's
It's
like
like-
a line from Major League. Oh yeah, well, they got uniforms and everything.
We got
And I was
uniforms
like-
and everything. I
No,
say that.
it was
all
like
the
I was like,
time.
they're actually not doing that bad this year.
Johnny, it pained me with Johnny because he did nothing and still did okay. Like the natural talent, he was the only one of the few players I've ever seen that literally did not practice, work on his craft, nothing, and could still win a ball game. Like it was wild. It was wild.
No,
Mr.
and
Football.
that was the thing. I mean, he was one of those guys that he made his success at A&M was based on improvisation, and he was a great athlete. He could think really quickly on his feet, and that was one of those things that might not necessarily transfer to the NFL. I've talked to enough NFL players that they all say the same thing. When you ask them what's the biggest difference between the college game and the pro game, they all say the speed. They say everything happens faster in the NFL. And, raw talent only gets you so far at that point. I mean, you have to, you have to study the playbook. You have to work at your craft.
Yes.
You have to,
Yes.
get on the ball. And Johnny didn't do that in college, and he was able to get away with it. He was not able to get away with that in the NFL.
Yeah, old Billy,
No.
old Billy. Yeah,
And my exact words when they drafted him, I said, this makes the Browns more interesting. I'm not sure it makes them better.
True.
we're definitely a talking point.
Hey, fun fact though, I did way better in that fantasy league than I did in the Dude Network one. So shout out Johnny. Shout out Johnny.
Yeah, good job, John. We got him back. Johnson's all back into football. Damon, how many fantasy football teams you ever had?
0.
Well, you're gonna have one next year.
Yeah, you got first timer.
Y'all got different fantasies than I do.
Right?
Oh, Stealing jokes.
Hey, it worked though. I didn't hit a
That's
run
what
off.
the
Hey,
Cranberries
that's
debacle.
plagiarism. That's plagiarism.
Yeah, hey, I had to run with it. It was so good, I had to run with it.
No, hey, not with the
That's,
author.
I've never done fantasy football either, just because my grip on reality is kind of tenuous as it is.
Yeah,
Oh,
I just
come
do
on.
it because
Dude,
I'm competitive.
You're
I
like
need
a
to win something.
sports almanac.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can't believe you haven't.
That's
Vince,
kind of like, I mean,
We're
I'll
getting
watch
you in
them,
this
but
year.
I just don't have, a vested interest. This is the same thing with the NCAA tournament. I never do a bracket. I'll watch basketball all weekend, but I have no interest in filling out any kind of paperwork.
no
My
one really
bracket
likes
did
doing. I
excellent.
found out. Yeah, I found out last year. No one likes doing brackets anymore. With live betting, brackets are dead. Like brackets are of the legal of the when you couldn't gamble legally past. I will say that.
Well, I mean, it was, and obviously, sports betting just came to Ohio. It started on New Year's Day this year, and it has been, obviously, there have been a lot of people who are throwing around a lot of money, in person too, but everybody's getting into the apps and the online betting. I mean, it's one of those things that everybody's trying to get a piece of.
Yeah.
Shout out Tipico.
Yeah.
You're such a good company, man.
It's not mine, but I'm today just spreading the good word because I don't have one. I'll spread
Sure.
somebody else's. They seem cool.
Shout
But
out.
no, yeah, shout out. Hashtag open for biz. But no, Vince. I mean, dude, I've been really enjoyed nerding out here with you. I feel Damon and Johnsy got a little taste of the third wheel tonight. With us being not Clevelanders, but I hope they got Damon Johnsy. I hope you guys.
Now. Now I kind of feel like a fucking third wheel.
Well, I hope Damon and Johnsy taking this show like we're
I'm always a
passionate
third wheel.
and they understand why we're just the way we are. Like
No, dude,
that
straight
why-
up, after knowing you and seeing a bunch of crap on the internet about Ohio, I really want to read this book.
It's
So
$9.99. It's a
yeah.
solid. It actually will teach you, Johnsy. If anybody would ever consider moving out to the area,
Oh,
it would be a good book to learn the history of the area, the suffrage, the highs, very few of them, and the lows, very many of them.
Dude, I just feel like every word is exactly how I tell people it is being a Chargers fan, but we win a lot more games. We don't do anything with them ever, but
I promise you, after you read this book, you will have sorrow. You will have
But
sorrow.
I hope it's in an entertaining way.
Yeah.
I doubt it could not be.
Laugh at us, not with us.
Yeah,
We've learned to laugh, though. I think, Vince, can you agree that, like, we just take bad news in stride? Like, can you even enjoy a close game in Browns football anymore? Like, I know, like, Baker turned it around for me a little bit, but we called it Brownsing it up. Like, boy, they're going to really Browns this one up. Like, I mean, if they had a 14-point lead or less with, like, 5 minutes to go, like, oh, this game's not going to go well for us.
I can remember watching that playoff game against the Steelers in 2020, the one that the Browns won. And they were up, 20 at the half. And I got to tell you, I was sweating bullets. I have never been that terrified of anything in my life.
20.
It was an ass whooping. Like, I've never seen the Browns beat the shit out of the Steelers like they did that one day.
Somebody said to me, how big of a lead does it have to be that you will feel confident at this point? And I said triple digits.
Good night.
Yeah, hey, I remember that too. I mean, I just kept drinking. Because I was like, I'm going to need this.
And I have a mixed marriage. My wife is a Steelers fan, but she comes by it honestly. She's from Pittsburgh, and after I think it was the first quarter, she says, "That's it. I'm going to bed." And I'm going, I can't. I mean, I have no assurances that the Browns are going to win this game until it hits triple zeros on the scoreboard.
Yeah,
I've seen. I know that pain.
I went
seen
to
the Chargers beat people and just
the Jets game last year where the Browns pissed away that 14-point lead. They said that was the first time that a team had lost like that since the Browns lost to the Bears at Soldier Field in 2001. And I was at that game at Soldier Field. I had a couple of buddies from high school. They were living in Illinois. They said, we're going to go to Chicago that weekend. We're going to get drunk. We're going to go to the Browns game. It'll be great. And it was great. Right up until about 2 minutes left in the game, the Browns were up 14 points. The Bears score. They recover the onside kick. They score again to send it into overtime. And I'm going, oh, my God. And it was really funny. We were sitting at the top of the stadium in the end zone. And they were, I was watching the fans start to stream out, and then they scored a touchdown, and you see all these fans just stop, and there's a trickle of people going back to their seats, and then the Bears recover the onside kick, and all of a sudden everybody starts coming back to their seats, and I'm done. So this is it. This is how it's going to play out.
Yep. Exactly. Oh, man. Vince, I feel that, man, we could keep going on and on this, man. Like this is awesome. But hour and a half into this, man, we're gonna wrap this up, and this is so good. We might have to have you back for a part 2 sometime if you'd ever be feel so obligated to do so. I would love to have you back, man. This has been an absolute blast. Everybody have a great weekend. Sunday night, another foodie show. It's going to be us. We don't have any guests because it's Father's Day and we're all dads. So I think we're all
DAD squad.
Yeah, we're just going to sit there and hang out and be dads together. And then if anybody else wants to join us and talk about some foodie stuff and everything like that, Vince, you included, hop on 9 o'clock on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, any of the 8 platforms we stream this out on simultaneously. If you ever feel so obligated, share it to your feed. If you feel your friends would like to watch this show, share it out to them. Don't forget about our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Dude Network, Dude Sessions. Find that, subscribe to it for us. And if you feel really friendly and you're nice and tuned up on some garage beers, give us a good review on that thing too. Vince, thank you again so much, man. That was awesome.
This is a blast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolute blast.
And if you're all interested in the book, it's available at the usual suspects, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Gray Publishing puts it out, graycode.com. You can buy it directly from their website too.
Absolutely. Or like I said, I found it right on Apple Books. If anybody's got the Apple phone, hop on there as well. It's on Amazon, which means you can spend some free points. You ain't got to buy the book. Just give up some of your points that you're sitting on there and sit there and get you a good read that's fun. You only got to be a Cleveland fan to enjoy it, because if you like history, you like sports, you like the weird, the wild, the coincidences, this book is just for you. Everybody, you're just for us. We love you all. Thank you so much for all the support as always. Dudes and dudettes, have a fantastic weekend. Do us a favor, love on someone that you didn't love on in the last couple of weeks. Spread some love. Make a new friend this weekend. You don't know when that person's needing somebody. We're in this together. ELE. Everybody love everybody, and we will see you on Sunday at 9 o'clock, and all our social medias in between. Like, share, subscribe, follow. Love everybody. We'll see you next